and here it is, my take on Mono Black Aggro. This deck has become very, very popular recently and has been played quite a bit on online. And with the last F&M I went to, there were 3 other people playing a very similar deck to mine. So it was nice to be able to compare and see what they were running versus what I was running. So that was really cool. But this is my take on what it is. I ended up going 2 and 3 that night with it. And I probably should have done better, but I made a couple of bad misplays that I think cost me a couple of games. So in the hands of someone a lot better in Magic than me, I'm sure it would do a lot better. But here we go. So for the land base, we have 20 swamps. Straight up just swamps. And you can fish around with this. I saw someone using 4 Mutavaults, but I don't have any Mutavaults, and they're a little too pricey for my budget, so I just have 20 swamps. And I also saw some people tweaking around with the number of mana in it, but with my deck curving up, the most expensive card in my main deck is 3 mana. I don't need more than 3 swamp or 3 land out to run a sufficient game and play a good game. So that's why I only have the 20 mana. If I get more mana, that's great, but I do not want to be mana flooded, so I only have the 20 swamps in here. For my 1-drops, I have 4 Tormented Heroes. Now, these are just 1 black mana for a 2/1 that comes into the battlefield tapped, which you're not going to be using this card anyway to do a lot of blocking, so it's good in that sense, and it really works well if you're on the play because you can untap and start attacking those next couple steps. But I really like the heroic trigger on this one. It doesn't make it any bigger, but it does drain your opponent 1 life and you gain 1 life, which can, in the long run, add up. I've played against enough people playing control with blind obedience, and that extort trigger has killed me a couple times. So I also have 4 copies of Gnarled Scarhide. This is another really fantastic 1-drop for a 2/1. It can't block, but in this deck you're not going to be blocking. That's not the point of this deck. The point of this deck is to hit hard and hit fast. It also has, if you get into the late game, it has that bestow cost that you can pay for it and make one of your guys even bigger and hopefully trigger heroics on either of the heroics I have in here, Tormented Hero or the Bloodcrazed Hoplite. Speaking of 2-drops, I have Bloodcrazed Hoplite, 4 copies of those. It's 2 mana, 1 colorless and 1 black for a 2/1. And its heroic ability is that you're going to put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you're going to take a +1/+1 counter off of one of your opponent's creatures, which can be a lot of fun to do. So that's just a good solid 2-drop. I run it instead of Painseer purely because I went with a more heroic aggro instead of trying to use the Painseers to draw more cards. Alright, my other 2-drop is 4 copies of Spiteful Return. I love this card so much. It's awesome. It's only a 1/1, but every time it attacks, your opponent loses 2 life. Yeah, just you attack and they lose 2 life and maybe 3 if it hits. It's a fantastic card. I really like it. And it also has a bestow cost, so if I get it late in the game, I can bestow it on one of my creatures and swing and get that extra 2 damage in plus the 1. Alright, 3-drops, I have 3 creature 3-drops. The first one being Herald of Torment. Now, this card is a 1 colorless, 2 black mana for a 3/3 flying creature, and it does have the drawback where you lose a life at the beginning of your turn. But that's okay. It's a really good, really fast, really aggressive. It has a bestow cost where if you get enough mana, you can start bestowing it on stuff and giving your creatures flying. It's really awesome. I also have 4 copies of Master of the Feast. I like this guy a lot too. I like a lot of these cards in this deck, especially the black bestow cards I really like in there. But this Master of Feast is 3 mana for a 5/5 flying, and your opponent gets to draw on your upkeep, but the point of this card is that you're hitting them for 5 a turn, and the amount of card advantage they're getting from it shouldn't matter because they should be dead before they can use any of them. That's the goal. And it's just really awesome. I really like it. I also have 4 copies of Mogis Marauders. Another good card. Not really because it's a great creature, it's only a 2/2, but because when it comes into the battlefield, you get to give X creatures haste and intimidate, where X is your devotion to black. And since I'm running all black creatures, that means I throw one of these down and every single creature I have gets haste and intimidate most of the time, meaning my opponent can't block and I hit them for the kill. This is like the top deck that saved me a couple games, and it was just perfect. This is a really good card for this deck, unless you're going up against another black deck, but then you can sideboard stuff like that out, and it works just fine. Alright, so for spells, I have 4 copies of Doomblade in the main deck, and they're just good basic creature removals. Like, they won't work against, non-black. They only work against non-black creatures, so if you're going to be playing another black aggro deck, you're going to definitely want to sideboard these things out because they're going to do nothing for them. But they're really good to get rid of pretty much all your opponent's creatures that are going to be in the way trying to block. If you don't have Mogis Marauder out, you can Doomblade them. I also include 4 copies of Ordeal of Erebos. And this is basically just like all the other ordeals. Whenever the creature that it has this enchantment on it attacks, you get to put +1/+1 counter on it. And then if you have 3 or more, you get to discard the ordeal and force your opponent to discard 2 cards. I got to do this once during the Friday Night Magic I played last, and it was great. My opponent was like, I'm gonna lose because I just had to discard 2 of my best cards. So it can really work awesomely, and it gives your creatures +1/+1 counters that don't go away, which is awesome. And it'll trigger your heroic on Bloodcrazed Hoplite and Tormented Hero. So you're either getting another extra +1/+1 counter off of it, or you're gaining 1 life and your opponent's losing a life. So yes, that's a good card. I also have 3 copies of Hero's Downfall, again, just to get rid of creatures and planeswalkers. Because with a lot of Johnny out, Kiora, Elsbeth, Jace, all those planeswalkers can be a big problem, and you don't want to. This deck does not want to have to waste time attacking into those. It wants to just straight up attack life totals. So these Hero's Downfall is great because it can just take care of those planeswalkers and you don't have to worry about them. And I have only 3 copies of those because I don't have a full 4 set yet. So I'm running 1 copy of Necrobite in my current main deck. It will probably be changed to Hero's Downfall once I get another copy of that. But Necrobite is 3 mana for a give your creature death touch and then regenerate it. So hopefully you'll be able to get rid of one of their creatures, regenerate your own creatures, and if you're even lucky enough, you'll get to trigger a heroic from Bloodcrazed Hoplite or Tormented Hero. So that's the main deck I have. In my sideboard, I have 4 Dark Betrayals to trade out for the Doomblades when you're facing off against a black deck. I have 2 copies of Thought Seizes if you want to go to more control-y, a little slower, and use your life source as, or life points as a resource, and hopefully get rid of some cards that are going to be important for their deck. I also have the other 3 Necrobites, which I may be changing out for something else, but it's just more ways to kill creatures if you're in that situation. I also have 4 copies of Breathe the Bones. Now this works really, really well because you can go through your hands really, really fast, and this gives you the opportunity to scry 2 and then draw 2 new cards, or 2 more cards, which was really good because with all these 1-drops and these 3-drops and stuff like that, you're going to be wanting to fill up your hand as much as possible and get more gas as fast as you can so you can just destroy your opponent. But I only use these in the longer game because hopefully the first couple, the goal at this point of this deck is to be really fast, and so hopefully, by the time you run out of stuff in your hands, your opponent's dead. That's the goal. I also have 2 Whip of Ereboses in here. I haven't actually got to use them, but they just seem like they would be really fun with this deck to be able to bring stuff like Master of the Feast back from your graveyard if you have that opportunity, but I haven't needed to really sideboard into these yet. But if you have a longer game and stuff that you're going to be up against, it would be good to sideboard into these. So that is my black heroic aggro-y type deck. Let me know what you think in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe for more.